It's crashed. Oh. Oh. Some people are. Some people are. Yes, yes. But it's just as an in case, you know. I see Marcel's come back now, so hopefully Alpha will come back too. So just relax, and if Alpha's not here by, let's say 20 past, then right. Thanks. Thank you. Excellent.
Hello.
Hello, good afternoon, dear
Hi,
colleagues.
Vladimir.
How are you?
How are you doing?
Perfect. Thank you.
Excellent. I have to use the computer in my office because IT will not permit me to use my computer with Endnote in one of the labs or one of the classrooms. So yeah, this is the only other option. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
From my side, it's completely perfect. But the main thing is it's being recorded, I see. So when you share your screen, the others will be able to see. So perfect.
Yes. Hi, Alpa.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for opening it up there. So Alpa will be the intermediary in the classroom, and
Yeah.
he's got the whip, so he'll go whack for all those that are sleeping.
I'm gonna keep everybody in the class, don't worry.
Oh, wait.
Great. You just need to open the screen behind you as well.
Yes, I will.
Okay.
Good morning, everyone.
Hi, Mena.
Hi.
Yes, we are ready here in the classroom.
Sorry, what's that?
Good afternoon, everyone.
Hi, Farid.
Good afternoon.
Great.
Good
I
afternoon.
can see it there behind you. Dr. Farid, they say managing lecturers is like herding cats.
I hope
And if
we're
you've
not the
ever-
cats in this situation.
If you've ever had cats, you know how difficult it is to herd a cat.
After class, yeah, straight afterwards, so that's fine. Let's stay.
Dream team is gonna be in the class.
We should probably wait a few minutes.
Just to let you know, we already have guests here in the
Okay,
classroom. Yes.
Yeah, I would say just one more minute, Dr. Dieter, and please start. I mean, no need to.
Okay.
He's online.
Dieter, could you please say a couple of words so that I will test the sound here?
Great. Thank you, Dr. Alpha. I appreciate what you've done, opening up there and facilitating in the classroom.
Just
Okay.
quick explanation. Dr. Dieter is gonna do it online because the Endnote that he's gonna use is not installed yet, so he's gonna do it online. If you're gonna be here, you're more than welcome. I'm gonna make the mediocre, I'm gonna be the Asian professor, but he's gonna do it online.
So can you all hear me?
Not very well.
And device setting.
Just turn up the
It's
sound.
like the sound in the.
Click here.
Online, you're
Voice
loud and
settings.
clear, but I think in class is the problem.
Maybe.
So speaker, audio speaker here, we put in
Okay.
this one here.
Yes.
It should be
How's
actually.
that? Is that better?
It was on our end,
It's much better now.
All right, great. Excellent.
going through the screen now.
Yes.
All right, can you all see the slides?
Yes.
Wonderful. All right. So, Dr. Vladimir, do you want to say a few words to start with?
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Dieter. One more
Thank
time,
you.
I would like to thank you primarily, and of course, our dear colleagues for joining us in this research training number 2, actually research session number 2. As you all know, and as we have announced earlier, this training will be dedicated to the literature review, and in a few minutes, of course, Dr. Dieter will have a virtual floor for himself to explain the key aspects of the literature review. I would like to announce the fact that in February, we will continue with these research trainings. The next one will be actually on February the 6th. Of course, when the time comes, we will announce it properly. It will be dedicated to grant research proposals and the writing grant research proposals. Actually, we will have 3 sessions in a row, but when the time comes, we will, of course, announce it in much more details. For now, that would be it. Thank you one more time for participating. Please use the opportunity to build your capacities in terms of literature review and, of course, for those topics that we are going to cover in the forthcoming period. Dr. Dieter, the floor is yours. Thank you so much in advance.
Thank you very much, Dr. Vladimir. Can the people in the classroom see the slides clearly? Okay, I'm not hearing anything, but I'm assuming
Yes.
that's fine. All right, great.
Yeah, we are okay,
Excellent.
but if you can put it in the presentation mode, is it in the presentation mode in your computer?
Let me just change it slightly.
Yeah, it's on his.
Yeah. Yes.
You can actually do this also.
It's right. Nicely.
Can you see me now?
Yes.
Funny view though.
Actually, the previous one was better.
The other one, all right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yes. Yes.
All right. So let me just introduce myself for those of you that don't know me. So I actually come from a school teaching background. I started off my career as a high school English teacher, and then I started training teachers for De Beers in Botswana, and then I was appointed Deputy Director of Woodhill College in Pretoria in South Africa. So in 2007, I came to Kuwait and started it at ACK, and I've worked at a number of different places, including the oil industry, and I've made my way back again to what is now AU, and I'm now Assistant Professor of Management. So I have a PhD in leadership from TTU in the US, and a Master's in Business Administration from Charles Sturt University. Now, when we do research, I think many of us feel like we don't know actually what we are doing. And this is fine, because even Albert Einstein said if we knew what we were doing, it wouldn't be called research, would it? So this is the whole point of doing the research, is that we want to discover things that we don't know or are uncertain about. Now, our goals of the workshop are to understand the purpose and basic requirements of an effective literature review, to cite sources appropriately, specifically using referencing software like Endnote, and I'm going to demonstrate that for you at the end of this workshop. Then to be able to critically assess research materials, to develop strategies for inventing, organizing, and drafting a literature review, and to complete a literature review process, including planning, the time, the reading, writing, drafting, reflection, and editing. So let's begin by trying to understand the purpose and basic requirements of an effective literature review. And there are essentially 5 things that we need to do to start with. The first is look at the research process as a whole and understand where this fits in that context. Then we need certain prerequisites for the literature review itself. We need to prepare our main keywords. We need to create our scholar profiles and collect relevant articles, papers, and books. So as we've seen last time in Professor Alpha's overall research process overview, we see that the first couple of steps really determine the path of where you are going in your research. Now, I know that many of you have done a master's and are going on to a PhD. And obviously, you've probably got some experience in this. But a couple of really important things are needed. As we can see on this diagram, topic generation is really important for you to start thinking through it from the beginning. Now, your topic will change. All right, don't think that it's going to be fixed throughout the period that you're going to work with it. It will change. But at least you can start with your basic idea and then move on and kind of see it evolve. Then we also need to plan our theoretical approach. And we're going to mention a little bit more about this. Professor Alpha did talk about this in more detail last week. Then we're going to look at the prerequisites for the literature review. So at this point...
Dr. can I interrupt?
Sure.
Could you please, your screen is minimized. If you could share it with us all so we can see, because at the moment it's just on the corner of the screen and we can see you and everything. Just like with this, I mean, I'm not sure if you've got a problem with displaying it for everyone by sharing it, because we can see it as a small box on the side, but
really?
a lot of the text is difficult to read, so we can...
Okay, so sorry, what can you see at the moment in the room? And
I mean, this slide is clearer, but it's still a small box on the side. It's not like when you share, usually you see the whole thing.
okay, let me just restart it, and then hopefully we can have the full screen.
We'd appreciate that. Thank you.
How is that? Can you see the full screen now?
More of you.
Sorry?
You see too much of you.
You can see yourself, you can see the screen, how we see it. If you just check the classroom, you see, mostly we see just the PowerPoint on the side as a small screen.
Want to take a screenshot and send him?
You should see it.
What can you see at the moment?
Small box, and I mean, mainly the screen shows you with the small, with the slide showing as a small box on the side of the screen.
Okay, that's very odd.
Do you see me, Dieter?
No, I don't see you.
Okay.
Let me just swap.
Yes.
How's that?
Same.
Same. So it's not changing? Because it's changing on my side. I apologize for this.
And actually, your slides look like a background of your presence. Actually, we are seeing you, but the slides very small on the side. So
That's
I
very
don't know
odd.
if you, I don't know how you did it. Actually, I never did it.
Dr. Dieter, maybe
check
you
your
can
phone real quick.
stop sharing first,
Yes.
and then try to share again. You have two options, to share
All right,
screen
okay.
and
All
window.
right. Okay, let's share that again.
Not really.
You can also just, when you...
Can you maximize PowerPoint?
Dita, I sent you a WhatsApp screenshot of what we've seen.
Okay.
Yes, the PowerPoint.
Now we are back to normal. If you just share the PowerPoint, probably it's gonna be much better.
I'm pressing screen, but nothing's happening at the moment. So let's just see. Okay, I'm just going to go in and out. Maybe that will help. All right, so I'll be back in a few seconds. I'm just looking back in again. It seems to be a bit of a, yeah, I've gone out. Okay, I'm just trying to connect. Doesn't want to connect. Yeah, it's just hanging. I have. Yeah.
Yes,
All good
that's
now.
better.
Okay, how's that?
Very good.
That's it. That's it.
Sorry, I had Teams crash on me too because Endnote is such a big program. So I was sharing the screen and because I've got to show you a number of different things on the screen, not just the PowerPoint, but that was causing the problem. So now I'm just sharing the window and I'll have to go out again and show you the other things once we've got reaching that point. All right. Okay, so let's see. Hopefully this is going to work okay. Can you see the full screen of the slides now?
Not the full screen, but it is manageable. Yeah, now we can see now the full screen as well.
Okay, I've got the full screen now. You can see that.
Yeah.
All right, great. Okay, my apologies for that. So essentially the prerequisites for the literature review include an understanding of the general area that you want to research, a general conceptual framework to work within, an inkling of the gap that may exist in the literature, a grasp of the problem or problems that you're wanting to solve, some idea of the theoretical model that you're working towards, a provisional topic generation with the guidance of the supervisor, and then a basic research thesis dissertation statement with keywords. Now, you may not have all of those things completely in place from the start, but these are the things that you need to kind of provisionally be thinking about and having in your mind, so that as you go through the literature, you are able to look at each of these and make sure that you are producing a sound literature review. Now, when we start off to find the literature, we need to look at our provisional topic. And this is one example of a provisional topic. So the spillover effect of the supervisor's misfit with the organizational culture on subordinates through LMX. This is a paper that we are working on with Professor Alper. So what we start here with is the main keywords. So for example, misfit, LMX, organization, supervisor, subordinate. And then we just search the internet for the most relevant papers and books. Now, once I've done this, this presentation, I'm going to go through to look at all the tools that we use. But let's just go through this, and then once we've finished, I will look at all the tools. So our conceptual framework is very important, and it's important for us to understand the independent variables, the dependent variables, as well as those moderating, mediating, or control variables that will have an effect on it. Remember that the difference between the conceptual and the theoretical framework is very important. So the concepts are the basic ideas behind what you're doing. So for example, what we are working at is something like this. We are looking at leader-member exchange, or LMX. And so we're looking at the follower characteristics, the leader characteristics, interpersonal relationships, and how they eventually produce consequences and are moderated by contextual variables. So the theory, as we go along, as we look at the literature, the theory is going to slowly but surely emerge from the readings that we see. And hopefully, in the literature review, we can write maybe a paragraph of all these different aspects of the theories that we are going to use. Now, obviously, the first thing that we need to do is to look at creating our scholarly profile on a number of different websites. So ORCID, for example, we all have. Google Scholar is very important. Now, I will go through all of these and look at the actual websites with you. I just want to briefly name them here. So ResearchGate and academia are also very useful tools. WorldCat is an outstanding reference tool. Archive and openlibrary.org are extremely helpful to find a lot of resources. Script, also I will mention that at a later stage. And then the more scholarly papers are from Semantic Scholar, full papers, the Network Digital Library of Theses and Dissertations, and then the open access thesis and dissertations, theses and dissertations, where no registration is required. So I will come back to these once I close this and come and show you the actual websites, and then we can talk through them as well. Now, what I'm using on my computer, and this is half of the problem of what we are doing, is that Endnote is a very big program. And it's one of a whole suite of programs that Clarivate uses. So they also have ProQuest, and they have Web of Science, which you can actually log in with your ORCID profile too. So make sure that you've created all your scholarly profiles, and this will give you access to a lot of material that you would not normally be able to get. Even on Google Scholar, if you just have a profile, you can actually do a lot more. It also obviously helps you to build your academic presence and your reputation. So these are just a few examples of what you would have done, hopefully by now: creating your ORCID profile, creating your Google Scholar profile. For those of you that haven't done it yet, this is kind of what it looks like. And then it shows you also your citations and indices. ResearchGate is another very useful tool, and I would encourage you to create a profile there. Academia.edu is very good. That is really a very useful tool too. WorldCat is less known, but actually an extremely useful tool. And I will tell you more about that once we have a look at that when I get out of this. Now, when you're collecting relevant articles, papers, and books, it's important for you not just to use a basic search, but you need to go to an advanced version of that. All right, I will show you that in practice after the presentation. So go to the Google Books Advanced Search, and then you've got a number of parameters that you can fill in, where you can specify certain words, exact phrases, exclude certain words, and, for example, look at full views, which is very useful for older books that are out of print or that are no longer under IP. And then the Google Scholar Advanced is similar. You also have the advanced search, which you must really use rather than the simple search. Now, when we look at what we have at the AU Library, obviously it's very useful for us to use our EBSCO, but also there, once again, use the advanced search option that we see in the middle there. And that's really going to help us a lot more than we will otherwise. So the second step is to cite sources appropriately, specifically using referencing software like Endnote. Now, there are many different types of referencing software. The one that I'm demonstrating is Endnote, and that's purely by accident because in 2010, when we were still part of Tasmania University, they actually allowed us as lecturers to download it for free. Now, unfortunately, CQ doesn't have that option for us, which would be very nice because it's actually a very expensive program, and it's probably the one that's used probably the most, I think, overall. So here, what we need to do is use the import function and download the PDF files where necessary, and then attach the PDF files to the EndNote reference. Now, I'm going to show you how to do that in a moment. Now, so there are many different types of referencing software, and they include ones like Mendeley, Red Cube Papers, Article Galaxy Enterprise, Atero, Sywheel, Paperpile, EndNote, and you can actually do a nice comparison on them at the website here, the G2 website. And what G2 has actually done is they have very nicely laid it out on a grid to compare satisfaction overall as well as the market presence. And if you look here, you can see that EndNote is definitely the highest market presence, but there isn't a huge difference with some of them, and some of them are obviously for free, which is great, but then they have very limited capacity. So Mendeley actually has the highest satisfaction rating overall, and that is used also very widely in academia, especially in higher education. So EndNote to me has just been something that I stumbled on by accident, and it's been a wonderful tool for me to use in the last 12 years. And I'll demonstrate that also once I've just gone through the basics with you. Now, when you look at, for example, at the Google Scholar search, and you've done a search on it, there are two things that are going to emerge. First of all, you have you can click on here, all right, which shows you the different citation methods, and it automatically will actually import it onto your computer, and then you can open it into EndNote. Or if you use other formats like RefMan, RefWorks, etc., or BibTeX. And then you also have the PDFs that are attached, which I will demonstrate to you after this, and you can download the PDFs. And it's actually amazing to see the amount of PDFs that are just available on Google Scholar. I would say over the years, I've gotten probably 2/3 of my PDFs on Google Scholar, and then probably others on Google Books and a few others like EBSCO, etc. Now, this one happens to be on EBSCO, but that is not always the case. And then this is what it will look like on your EndNote referencing, which I will go through in a moment. The third step then is to be able to critically assess the research materials. So how many references to collect, how to decide which ones to keep, how many references to actually have at the end of it. Now, it's difficult to say how many references you should collect, but there are a few rules of thumb that may be useful for you, especially for those young researchers that haven't yet done their PhD. So for a research paper or article of 10 to 20 pages, about 30 to 60 references is a good starting point. For a master's thesis of 50 to 100 pages, collect about 150 to 300. For a PhD dissertation of 150 to 250 pages, about 450 to 750. Now, you will not keep all these references, all right? You will discard some of them. Just as you clean your data later on, once you've collected that, you will also clean your references at the beginning, because you don't want to clutter it up too much. And every reference that you have, you should at least refer to it in the text of your research, whether it's a paper, dissertation, or a thesis. And the good ones you will also then quote from, and those will hopefully be the best ones. So how do we decide which ones to keep? Well, read through the abstract of each paper first, scan the paper, read the conclusion, see if it's relevant and useful to the topic. If not, then even though the keywords may have shown it to be something you can use, discard those. So clean them out and only use those references that are that are completely relevant to what you are doing. So keep those that are partly relevant, at least, to keep the references fairly long enough, but try to refer to them somewhere that they are relevant. So try to use them at least as just a simple reference, and the really good ones you will try to quote from. Maybe one quote per page or so is a good rule of thumb. So ultimately, what you should land up with for a research paper or article of about 10 to 20 pages, keep about 20 to 40 references. A master's thesis of about 50 to 100 pages, keep about 100 to 200 references. For a PhD dissertation of about 100 to 350 pages, keep about 200 to 700 references. Now, I mean, obviously, this depends very much on what you're writing about, and there's so many variables involved in that. The fourth step then is to develop strategies for inventing, organizing, and drafting a literature review. So there are 5 elements here that are really important. First of all, you need to read. Then you read more, then read even more. You need to look at your research preparation milestones. You need to look at whether you want to do quantitative or qualitative research. You need to look at the length of PhDs and also the length of literature reviews. So first you need to read, then read more, and then read even more. Now, Booth and Bell have said a researcher cannot perform significant research without first understanding the literature in the field. So probably half of the time that you spend in producing a research paper, a thesis, a dissertation, is going to be in the initial reading of the existing literature. I remember before I even started my PhD, I spent years researching my particular topic. And that really helped also in actually the process of writing the actual dissertation. So in terms of the milestones, as you do this, there are a couple of things that are going to emerge that I talked about in the beginning. You will understand what are the main issues involved in your particular topic. You'll be able to identify the most important research gaps. Then you'll also start formulating your research questions. And when it comes to quantitative research, also your hypotheses will start to emerge. It will also guide the direction of your research, so that as you see what the literature is saying, you'll discover maybe some of them are saying what you've said, but there may be other areas that you need to explore. And then obviously you will also, through this process, start to be directed to either qualitative or quantitative research. By the way, you don't choose your research method. It chooses you. So through reading, you will see which will be the best way to do the research. And you must not try to squeeze it into one or the other. You must let it be a natural evolution so it can guide you to see where you will actually and how you will do your research. Now, I don't want to spend too much time on quantitative or qualitative methods, but basically your quantitative research is based on deductive hypotheses. It will simply research. It will support your research topic and what you are trying to show. we don't say that we prove anything with research, all right? But we are trying to support a particular set of hypotheses, and that will emerge through this reading process. Now, as you go through the reading process, try to arrange your references to correspond to each of your emerging hypotheses if it shows that you're heading towards quantitative study. And then ultimately, what you also are going to try to do is write at least a paragraph to motivate the use of each of your hypotheses. And so that will be this natural evolution of how your literature review will develop. Now, currently about 70% of all research is quantitative. And so probably using the Pareto rule, you will most likely land up with quantitative study because most research is based on other research, and there's very little that is really, we can call it new. But when we look at qualitative research, it's more inductive. But here we are also guided by research questions, all right? And ideally, qualitative research should be to avoid bias as much as possible. So we are trying to see what is out there, all right? So whatever the questions are that we are developing, try to find answers to those questions. So as we do this reading, our research questions will emerge, and we will gradually be able to understand what are the main questions, how they've been answered in previous literature, and where we should maybe alter our questions and adjust those as we go along. And then when you are actually preparing to write your literature review, probably at least a paragraph should be dedicated to each of those emerging research questions. So you are going to be able to justify not only your hypotheses from the literature, but also justify your research questions from the literature. So currently about 30% of all research is qualitative. So most people go for the quantitative approach, but some try to do qualitative. Now, if you look at the overall length of PhDs, especially for those of you that are heading in that direction, we see that the average length of a PhD dissertation around the world is about 200 pages. Now, the German universities generally limit it to about 100 pages, just as the Germans like to be brief and concise. Harvard University restricts its length of PhDs to between 100 and 300. And then Cambridge University allows up to about 350 pages. Now, obviously, this depends on the field that you're in, the kind of research that you need to demonstrate, the length of your appendices, et cetera, et cetera. More scientific papers probably would be a little bit longer. Now, quantity is not the same as quality, but obviously it mustn't be too short. You can't write a PhD of 50 pages. So just make sure that you are heading in the right direction. In terms of the length of literature reviews, once again, we can just give some guidelines. In an article or paper, you're usually looking at 1 to 2 pages. In a thesis or dissertation, about 10 to 20 pages. So here you need to have at least one good quote per page and one good reference per paragraph. The literature review is not just a list of studies. So you're not just listing, okay, these are the people that have done research in this area. It actually follows an argument. It's the golden thread in the literature review where it offers an argument from a body of research to say, these are the hypotheses, or these are the research questions that have been used by other people. And so you draw from those as existing bodies of knowledge. Remember, very little research is done from a 0 point. You are always building on what other people have done, even though your field may be quite new or it may be groundbreaking. So we stand on the shoulders of giants, and none of us can claim to be great researchers unless we actually have done that. And there's so much that our predecessors have done that we can make good use of. Now, the last section here, before we get to the practical demonstration, is to look at completing the literature review process, the planning, the time, the reading, the writing, the drafting, the reflection, and the editing. So we're going to look at what is a literature review, the steps for writing a literature review, planning the literature review, reading and researching, questioning the readings using the PQRS method, the full analysis tasks of the literature review, the research questions, the drafting, some tips on revising, saving your references, and then just summarizing the process. So what exactly is a literature review? Well, it develops an argument by summarizing, by presenting key information, and by synthesis, so reorganizing that information. It distinguishes what has already been done and identifies what needs to be done. The key developments in the literature actually are demonstrated. How your work connects with the current literature also needs to be explicit. And then it provides us this framework where new findings are compared to previous findings presented in the literature. And then this obviously later on also takes place in the discussion section of your thesis. So the steps for writing a literature review: planning, reading and research, analyzing, drafting, and revising. So in terms of planning, our focus, we need to look at the specific thesis, problem, or research question that the literature review helps to define. So identify a focus that will allow you to sort and categorize information and eliminate irrelevant information. Don't try to pad your bibliography with unnecessary and irrelevant articles and books. All right, discard those from the start, unless you think maybe this guy's got some idea that I can explore, and maybe I can actually benefit from that at a later stage. Then we need to look at the different types. So what types of literature review you're conducting: theory, the methodology, the policy, quantitative, qualitative, the scope. What is the scope of the literature review, the types of sources that you're using, and then the academic discipline. So obviously what fields you are working in. So then our reading and researching is really important. Collect and read the material, all right? Summarize the sources. Who's the author, the main purpose, the author's theoretical perspective, the research methodology, the intended audience, the principal points, the conclusions, the thesis, the contention, the questions, the author's position, how the study relates to the other studies of the problem or topic, how the study adds to your project, and really try to stick with only relevant books and articles. Now, I'm not suggesting that you must discard a huge amount of articles, because sometimes your topic will start off as something and land up as something very different. So if you have any doubts, if you think this guy may have something that may be useful, keep it. But if it's really not something that you will ever refer to again, discard it. So as we look at grouping the readings together, we need to look at the shared themes, ideas, or issues presented. Look if there's a gap missing somewhere. And often that gap may be different to the gap that we originally started with. So our gap that we thought was missing actually may be filled by the literature review somewhere. And somebody may have actually done what you are thinking of doing. But you may then find another gap, which the literature will then show you. And so you can change the gap and change your topic accordingly. Then you need to look at what trends and developments are evident in the literature and what theoretical approaches that you have identified. Now remember, there's a difference between the conceptual and the theoretical approach. The concept is the basic idea, and the theory is the actual theories that have been developed through research. All right. And both of these are very important for us to keep separate but understand simultaneously. Now, using the PQRS method, we preview. So we do the preliminary reading the abstract, the introduction, the first sentence of each paragraph, and the conclusion. And we only read it thoroughly when you're certain that the information is relevant to your research area. So this is a good way that we can discard the ones that are not relevant. And then we ask questions, all right? What do you need to find out? What are the main questions and conclusions of the paper? Are there possible alternative interpretations of the literature? Then the reading, so be active, search for all answers to the questions, and then summarize, take selective notes, maybe use color and space to organize. And you can do this in a number of different ways. I'll show you how to do it to a certain degree on Endnote, which is, it's got some useful tools for us to actually do that. So the 4 analysis tasks of the literature review: to summarize, to synthesize, to bring together, to critique, and to compare. Summary is very important, especially in the literature review. You need to get the key ideas. Synthesize, you need to bring together the clusters of either the theories or that lead to your hypotheses, or else the questions that are emerging together. You need to obviously be critical, and you need to critique and critically look at the articles and the books and the theses. And your whole approach mustn't just be reporting, it needs to be critical of what has been said. And don't be scared of that, to actually critique what you have in your literature review. And then comparison obviously is logical. So now research questions come out in both quantitative and qualitative research. And it's useful for both of them to have a few basic questions coming out. So maybe identify 3 questions that your literature will answer. So the key topics will be discussed in these questions. So what questions do you need to ask in order to obtain the answers that will enable you to respond to the research problem? So our thesis statement, information and communication technology allows employees to be constantly tethered to the ICT. This is just a completely hypothetical one. And then we develop 3 really important questions. So what are the intended consequences of ICT use? What are the unintended consequences of ICT use? And then how does ICT use allow employers to expropriate from employees? Once you've got your basic questions, you can then start seeing, okay, is this going to be quantitative or is this going to be qualitative? So if it's quantitative, then you maybe have a very clear idea of what you want to prove, or okay, not prove, but support with the evidence. And then what you are looking at, the qualitative approach, is, well, I don't really know enough about this, or there's not enough information, and we need to just research this and find out more answers. So drafting needs to be chronological, thematic, and methodological. So chronological, depending on the nature of your literature and development of ideas. So a chronological approach will present the development of a key trend or progressions and changes in the practices. The thematic will be looked at how the concepts come through, how the theories come through, how the issues come through, and try to get those together so that you can start your paragraphs quite clearly. And then obviously also methodological. The review focuses on the methodological or paradigmatic. Paradigm is basically a model, all right? So you are going to construct your model, just as I showed you earlier, of really how it looks like in a diagrammatic form. And then we will take that either to the hypotheses or to the questions. Now, some tips on revising. Always revise the title, all right? It probably will never stay the same from the beginning. And ask yourself, is my title consistent with the content of the paper? Then your introduction, do I appropriately introduce my review? The thesis, does my review have a clear claim? The body, is the organization clear? Have I provided headings? The topic sentences, have I clearly indicated the major ideas of each paragraph? Transitions, does my writing flow from one paragraph to the next? And then at the end of it, my conclusion. So do I provide sufficient closure and bring it all together? Obviously, you also need to check your spelling and your grammar. Now, you need to save your references, and please don't make the mistake that many of us have made at different times. to keep a record of the literature that you collect, record where and when you retrieve the information, use a citation manager program like Endnote, and rather have too many references than rather having to go back and to try to find your references. So really, if we summarize this, we can look at a few important key elements. Formulating a problem, doing your search, refining your topic, analyzing it, and then constructing your review. So we've now looked at the 5 main points of the workshop: to understand the purpose and basic requirements of an effective literature review, to cite sources appropriately, specifically using referencing software like Endnote, to be able to critically assess research materials, to develop strategies for inventing, organizing, and drafting a literature review, to complete the literature review process, the planning time, reading, writing, drafting, reflection, and editing. There are a few references, and I want to thank Miana for all her help too. She has really been a wonderful part of this process. Now let's look at the practical demonstration and the questions. So if we want to look at these particular things that I've mentioned, there are some amazing tools for us to use. And I'm just going to ask somebody to tell me what you can see on the screen once I've closed this, because I want to show you empty slides. Okay, great. Endnote is a slightly big program, so it tends to slow down everything that you do on your computer. But what I want to do now is I want to give you a view of the Endnote program, and then I'm going to take you through a couple of these websites that I have mentioned, and hopefully we can actually see practically how those work. Can you see my Endnote library on your screens?
No.
Not yet, Dr.
Okay, all
Dieter.
right. So, okay, I will just have to change. I think this was the problem earlier on. So I need to now change. I will stop sharing, and then I will have to reshare, and I will not do the screen because that produced problems. I will simply do the window, and okay, wait. Let me try the screen sharing again, because the screen sharing is actually quite important, but let's see what you can see on your side. Can you see my Endnote library at the moment?
Yes, we can see.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, great. Hopefully this will work this time, because I need to jump between my library and the internet. So can you see the internet at the moment? And I've got it open on the ORCID website.
Yes.
Can you see the ORCID website? Okay, great, wonderful. Okay, so now assuming you've all actually done your ORCID profiles, you can now use that particular number on the top left-hand side, all right? And that number you can use for a number of different applications. I will show you one or two as we go along. Also, when you use Google Scholar, for example, all right, you can see I've got my profile and it's logged into my profile, and then click on the left on those 3 bars and go straight to advanced search rather than just search in the normal way. All right, so for example, let me use the paper that we're currently busy with. So LMX, and then we're also going to look at Misfit, right, Professor Alper. Let's see what we get through this. I don't want an exact phrase. I want to look at least one of the words like supervisor or subordinate. Sorry, mistype there. Okay, I might also type in there, for example, leader or follower. Okay, that will just give me a variation. And then I can do it without words, and then it can be anywhere in the article, in the title of the article. I'd like to keep it anywhere in the article, and then we can do our search. All right. So now I've already got this one actually for our reference list. This next one, I don't think I have. So what you see here is you have this little icon, okay, which is your citation icon. Now I'm going to do the citation first, and then I'm going to go to the actual PDF. All right, so if I click on there, I see it gives me all these different versions. And by the way, I've preset my EndNote for APA. All right, so it will automatically give me an APA, but just a warning, the format that you see, although they say whatever APA or Chicago, usually is not very accurate. So what you need to do afterwards is just go back and double check that the reference is in the APA format. And I will show you how to do that in a moment. So I'm going to click on this, and you will see it'll jump, and I've got the Scholar reference in my downloads. All right. So now I go to my downloads, and there it is. And I double click on that, and hopefully, there we go. Okay. It's now importing it directly. And not only is it importing it directly, but I can now edit it. Okay. As you can see here, it's an APA 7th edition. I can now look at it in terms of its summary. I can look at editing it in any way. I can add a number of parameters for the information, and I can also attach a PDF. Now, let's go back to our Google Scholar page. So I've cited it now. Okay, remember we used that. I now go to my research, my PDF, and this particular reference doesn't have a PDF, but this one does. So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to access it, and then I'm going to download it. Now you can see this particular one is actually from ResearchGate, all right, which is a very useful tool. And I can see here that it has downloaded, so I can now work with it. So what I do here in my EndNote is I click Attach PDF. That will go then to my downloads, and I can see there is the article, and there I've imported my article. All right. So if I just go to all my unfiled articles, I can click on there, and then it will show me that it's been saved. I go back to it there, and that's all well. Okay, that's been saved, that's fine. There's the summary of it. And then if I need to check the parameters, I can add in publishers, I can put in the supplement, etc., etc. And the useful thing now is I can now work with it. All right. So I can attach the PDF directly to this reference. I can also open it, and I can work with it as a PDF. So there it is, very useful. And I can just play around with it and do whatever I need to do with that particular reference. I just want to show you one or two little things that you can also do. If you go here, you can give it a rating, for example. So if it's a really good article, what I'll do is I'll give it a 5-star. All right, so I can really see just by looking at my list of articles, which are the really good ones. And my 5-star article is 4, 3, 2, 1. If you only give it a 1-star, probably you should get rid of it eventually. You might want to keep it just to be safe. But your 5-star articles, hopefully these are the ones that you're going to quote from. Your 4-star articles are the ones that you will reference. Your 3-star are the ones that, well, you'll probably keep, but maybe just once or twice include them. 2-star, you're thinking of getting rid of them. And then 1-star, basically, you don't really need that. You don't really want that. Okay, now I'm going to come back to this in a moment, but let's just look at some of the other tools that I've mentioned to you. So ResearchGate, I've mentioned to you, and once again, there's some amazing tools here. And I would really encourage you to add your profile, to create a profile here, and to start researching. The other one that is parallel with that is academia. Now, ResearchGate is based in Germany. Academia, I can't remember where that is based, but academia is really nice in that they also have a function where you can share your articles if they are provisional articles that you want to, as a draft, get feedback from people from all over the world. And then they can actually be part of this project of this process, and you can get some amazing feedback from that. Then we have WorldCat, which is something that very few people know about, but it's a very useful tool. And it shows you, for example, where you can find different aspects, different references. So if we use LMX again, and we look at Misfit, I just want to show you one or two things here from WorldCat that will be useful to you. And actually, what WorldCat does, it also takes your current location, and it shows you where you can get hard copies of particular references or books. All right. So if we click on this one, for example, Great Minds Think Alike, then we can get some very interesting information from that. And I'm just going to scroll down a little bit. Sorry, it's a little bit slow because Endnote is such a big program, and sometimes it hangs a bit. All right, so for example, here we can find copies, American University of Sharjah, Abu Dhabi University, etc. Places that are even a UK. All right, so this particular book or article is found at the American University of Kuwait. So if you can't access it online, you can take a trip in your car and ask them if you can get a copy of that. Then we have two other resources that are also very useful: Internet Archive and its sister, which is Open Library. Now, this is mostly for books that are no longer under IP laws. All right, so usually that are I think it's 80 years old or more. So yeah, but there are actually a lot more, even some that are currently under IP laws that have been printed fairly recently. You will be surprised what you find in these two. Now, usually these two have the same content, but I have found some differences. So often I've looked at Open Library and then I've gone to Internet Archive and I've found something there. So you can do a search here once again. All right, the advanced search is obviously the best one to do. And colleagues, you will be amazed at what is available, even stuff that is fairly recent that has been published in the last couple of years. So Internet Archive, their goal is basically to have all intellectual property connected through this particular website. And unfortunately, some of the articles you can only read online. You can't download the PDF. Others you can only borrow and use for a while. There are restrictions in terms of what the authors or what the publishers have insisted on. Then we have another very useful tool, which is Scribd. Now, Scribd allows you to upload articles and then you can download other articles. You will be surprised at the amount of free stuff on Scribd. Now, I do subscribe, so I do have a profile here, and wow, it just continually amazes me in terms of what I find on Scribd. Then the more scholarly article repositories include Semantic Scholar. All right, as you can see, I've got my profile there. Then there's full papers, very useful as well. Not always, they don't always have full texts, but sometimes they do, and that's quite useful. NDLTD is also very useful. And then open access theses and dissertations. All right, once again, you can use the advanced search option to look at various aspects. Now, when we look at, for example, Google Books, I'm just going to jump there and then come back to the Clarabate articles. I've done a search here just like with Google Scholar, you can get amazing things on Google Books. Also, mostly books that are that have expired, where the IP has expired. But once again, you can download the PDF here, right? So you can actually get a whole PDF of that book. I'm not going to go through the same process again. I think you know by now. And then if you go to about this book, then you can actually go to the bottom and you can get your EndNote reference for that. Okay, which is then here, which you can then open in the same way. All right, we've talked about the AU EBSCO. All right, so now let's look at the range of Clarivate products. Now, Clarivate, unfortunately, as a private company, have managed to hijack a lot of information on the internet. And this is, as an academic, a little bit worrying. As a libertarian, I'm very worried about the control that these large companies have. Another great reference is Harthy Trust, which I'm not going to promote here at all, because they restrict it not only to Americans, but often they restrict access, and you've got to pay a lot of money to have access to them. And I have a moral objection to them. But I'm basically married to Clarivate at this point. They have a huge amount of different programs that they use, and then obviously a Web of Science we've talked about. You can log in with your ORCID account. All right, so you log into the sorry, where are we now? A Web of Science. All right, and then you eventually create your own profile here, and then you can access also a huge amount of things. One nice thing about Endnote is that it also has an online facility, so you don't need to download it onto your computer, because it really takes a lot of space. And so, yeah, it's very nice to be able to use it, but it's obviously a lot more restrictive, and there's less that you can do with it in terms of actually operating it the way that I have been operating it. So as you can see with my EndNote, I've got a total of nearly 30,000 references. And I mean, it's on all kinds of topics. For example, problem-based learning, I've now got 910 references. All right. And that's, and I've managed to put them into different categories. And I'm working on 2 papers derived from that. So okay, I'm just going to make this a bit bigger and allow you to see what the categories are. So general, history, inquiry, collaboration, online, critiques, rubrics, teacher perception, philosophy, objectivism, constructivism, grounded theory, primary ed, higher ed. You know, I've tried to categorize them even according to the journals and then the different institutions that actually do PBL. And this really helps you to be able to construct your literature review too, which is so useful. All right, so I think I have done enough for now. So let's open it up to questions, and let's see what you guys want to ask. Maybe Professor Alper, if you can just come up to the screen, and you can just repeat the questions for me, and then I can assist the people from here.
Yep. Do you have any questions here? I'm gonna help you to transfer it to Dr. Dieter. Yes.
I have a question regarding the date of publications. I heard a lot of times that we should use up-to-date publications or literature. But sometimes I find literature in the 1990s and the 2000s that are very relevant to my research. Will I include it or not include it?
But there's a question from here. Dieter, do you hear me?
I did hear that. Thank you, Professor Alper. And that's a great question. You know, I also have experienced that too. And certainly, the rule of thumb is the earlier, the later it is, generally the more credibility it has okay, in principle, because you are assuming that it's based on the older studies. But as you said, sometimes you get a study that was done in 1990 or even 1950, which is a seminal study, which is maybe the defining study for that particular field. And it's really great for you to include that reference. But obviously, if you look at your reference list, I mean, if I show you, for example, my EndNote, can you still see my screen? Let me just show you my EndNote. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
All right. So,
Yes, Dr.
so for
Dieter.
example, if you look here, and one nice thing with EndNote is that you can actually arrange it by year, you can arrange it by title, etc., etc. Then you can see the range of dates that you've got here. So I've got some dates going back to 1967 when PBL first started. I've only got one actual reference, the actual attached reference, but this is a very important one. And then it goes right through until 2021 is my latest reference. But you will see that most of your references will be obviously later on closer to our time.
Yes. Can I add one more thing? With this
Yes, please do, Professor. Yes.
One of the main principles here, I mean, of course, when you try to publish, when you send your articles or thesis or whatever, the reviewers usually look for the latest articles that was written on this topic. However, when you going through the articles, sometimes you notice that kind of a bibliometric analysis, some main articles are always being referred, right? Cited, like let's say the theory articles that puts this thing, for example, LMX. There's an article in 1981. Most of the articles written on LMX is always citing this one. So it's better to have these main ones in your reference list to show them that you understand the subject, you know where the subject is coming.
Absolutely. Yes.
The second thing that I would like to add is please avoid using secondary reference. What I mean is, for example, if you see Dr. Dieter's publication in my article, so if you want to cite Dieter, please go and find it, because there's always a risk that I might consider it differently, I might perceive it differently, I might put my own comment on top of Dieter's article. So when you see something, if you cannot find, then cite me and saying that I saw this in Alper's article, but the main idea coming from Dieter's. So cite both of them, but if you can't find, please go back, find Dieter, and then read it from the original one. So it's always a risky point.
So we should always avoid a person citing another person. So we go to the source. So
you go to the source. This is the safest way. But again, sometimes it's very old. It might be impossible to find it. Then the best way, second alternative, is to cite the one that you saw it, and then in parentheses saying that this is cited by this person, so I read it from that one, not the original.
Is this method credible in the academic field, meaning that this person is citing another person who saw something else, like you just said?
The most credible one, using the original one, reading the original one, of course. I mean, this is, but again, if it is impossible, if it is so, I mean, old, you did everything that you could, but you couldn't find it, then it's the best alternative way to do it.
Okay, any more questions? Just one other really useful tool of EndNote is you can actually copy all your references into a separate paper, all right? And they will be automatically formatted according to APA or whatever you are using. Now, I'm not going to do it now because it's going to, because it's such a slow system, but essentially you'll be able to mark the ones that you want, and you will be able to then say, right, I want those references, and then you will automatically copy and paste it into another document, which is wonderful, because even though it's not 100% formatted most of the time, it does save you a lot of work. And then if you need to actually send your article to a different journal with a different citation method. Let's say it's not APA, let's say it's Chicago. All you do is you just change your preset citation method to Chicago, and then you copy that, and it automatically puts that into your paper. And it saves you a huge amount of time, really. These people that sit and check all their references and type them out, they clearly haven't yet made use of these kinds of referencing software. Any more questions?
There is one more question. Yes.
Regarding identifying research gaps. So, for example, I usually find studies that have been done in, let's say, USA, but hasn't been done in Kuwait. So, is the geographic location considered a research gap? Since it hasn't been done in Kuwait, now I'm doing the same thing, but in a different geographic location. Is this considered a research gap? Yes.
Did you hear the question, Peter?
Sorry, just I caught bits. Yeah, can you just repeat it?
Yes. The question is, there are lots of studies is being done in US, in European countries, or let's say in Eastern countries, Japan, China, whatever. So saying that we are going to do this research in Kuwait, is it a gap, or how can we define it? I mean, the fact that this study is not being done in Kuwait, is it a research gap?
Well, I mean, in the 20th century, where people weren't connected by the internet, a lot of people did the same kind of studies and then only discovered it later on, But now with the internet, there's really no excuse. And yes, in a sense, if the study has not been done in Kuwait, we can do it in Kuwait, and that is a gap. But it's not a gap in the literature as a whole from a theoretical perspective. So you may have some studies that have been done. And that's those are the real gaps, but then you are simply applying that to a local context, but that's quite valid. And frankly, a lot of research does that. All people do is they look at other studies and they say, all right, we'll take the same hypotheses, maybe even the same questionnaires, and simply apply it here. In marketing, for example, this is done in a very a common way, where you use the same approach that people have used somewhere else, apply it to Kuwait, and it's a perfectly valid way of doing it.
Yeah, thank you again. If you allow me, I'm going to add one more thing.
Please, Professor. Yes, go ahead.
It's valid. It's valid as long as you can justify your reason why you want to do it. For example, it's a kind of, let's say, if it's a chemistry research, right? There is no meaning to do it again here because it's the same everywhere. But if you justify that it might be different in Kuwait based on culture, based on behavior, based on something, so that it's going to be a valid question. Let me do it here and see if there is a difference or not. So that's again based on how you can justify repeating the same research in here. So.
Any more questions? If any of you want to see Endnote working, you're welcome to come to my office sometime and just have a look. I will show you. You can play around a bit. I know it's very expensive, and there are some cheaper names out there, but really, I think it's worth the investment, especially if you're making this a career. So I want to encourage you to use software, all right, to use referencing software. It's going to make your life a lot easier instead of changing everything and typing it all out by yourself. But at the same time, you must know that it's got to be in your budget, and you've got to take the knock.
There's one more question.
Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Dieter. Professor Alper, I don't have a question. This is rather a comment. I would like to thank you, of course, Dr. Dieter, for your presentation today and for the overview of different tools that we can use for the purpose of organizing and conducting a literature review. Especially, I would like to thank you for emphasizing the role of Google Scholar, ORCID, ResearchGate, and academia, for example, as research platforms in a way. because we all know that at some point we were creating our profiles over there, and we will still continue working on updating them constantly. So I would like to use this opportunity simply to invite our colleagues to continue working on their profiles in different platforms. It is very important for us to use the feature available over there and to promote our work to the world. This is the core reason. And thank you one more time for sharing and emphasizing the role of those platforms one more time. And I would like to call you when you have the time during the day to send me your PPT so we can later share the PPT with all faculty members. And thank you one more time on behalf of the entire research committee.
Thank you, Dr. Vladimir. Much appreciated. Thank you, Professor Alpa. Do you want to close it off there in the room? And then that's it.
Thank you, Dr. Dieter. We followed you very well, and thank you so much for.
Well, thank you to Dr. Mirna too. She prepared most of the second part, and I just kind of shoved things around a bit and added a few things, etc.
Pleasure, Dr.
She
Dieter.
really did a lot of work there, and I know her voice is not so good today. Hope she gets better soon.
Pleasure to be working on this with you, Dr. Dieter, and thank you for all of you for attending.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.